Well, Facebook as a connecting medium originated on the simple basis of share moments, keeping in tune with friends.
Instagram's co-founder.
Many people may experience feelings of anxiety, depression, loneliness around the holidays.
You spend a little too much time looking at pictures on Instagram, maybe scrolling through Facebook, or at some point, right?
Oh, sure, of course. I think we all have. But what if we told you it is so addicting and it is so competitive?
Indeed, it is by design.
I mean, seriously?
It was my mistake.
There are so many data scandals at the heart of Facebook. What is especially shocking, however, is that many times they accidentally expose their own unethical practices. Today, we're going to dig into the 5 key moments where Facebook slipped up and revealed just how badly they were mishandling our data. These are the incidents that have changed everything, not just for Facebook, but for millions of us who use it each day. These moments make us wonder who we should trust with our most intimate information. So watch the full video, because in the end, you'll question how shallow this world is. Let's begin with what has to be one of the most astonishing moments in accidental confession during a public interview. Imagine this: a high-ranking Facebook executive sitting for what should have been the routine interview. But what happened was that instead of sticking to the script, they let something slip and casually admitted that Facebook has been collecting more data than it needs, and certainly not always with users' permission. This was far from being a minor slip-up. Instead, it was a bombshell. Listeners wouldn't believe their ears if they were to hear how someone could have reassured us that Facebook was crossing its limits, collecting the data not because they need to, but just for the fact that they can do it. The pushback was immediate. Media houses all over the nation began picking on the quotation. Social media imploded out of outrage. The problem was compounded in how the company sought to address what was done, as if to clarify. But by then, too much damage had been done. Trust was broken. It was not just the media, it opened up ordinary users like you and me. You'd think that to wake up to the realization that your data, your messages, your photos, your location were collected not because it was necessary, but because Facebook wanted to have it all. That admission shattered the illusion that Facebook was a neutral platform, and suddenly people began questioning everything they had to say about how their data was being used. Then there was the social media blunder. You know, it's almost like irony. A thing built on social media exposed itself on that very social media. A post was live one day that it shouldn't have been. It was an internal thing, probably an update on data sharing practices, maybe something to do with internal policies, but it went live by mistake, and the world saw it.
Well, Facebook offered to all of its users a blanket opt-in to share their privacy data with any third-party users.
Congresswoman, yes, that's how our platform works.
This post showed that Facebook had third-party partnerships that were accessing user data in ways that hadn't been disclosed. People were furious. The idea that third parties, companies they had never even heard of, had access to their personal information was terrifying. It led to a flood of questions. Who were these companies? What kind of data did they have? And why hadn't Facebook been honest about it? Facebook tried to cover its tracks by deleting the post and issuing statements. Once something is out there, though it's out there, though it's out there. Screenshots had already been taken, and the damage was done. People were starting to realize that Facebook wasn't just careless, they were hiding things, and they were bad at it. Just imagine a room with many government officials, reporters, and cameras surrounding them. Facebook's top brass had to come down and testify to answer the company regarding their data practices. According to them, it was an opportunity for them to tell everybody that everything is in order. For Facebook, though, it was a nightmare. Under the intense grilling, something incredible happened. One of the executives hesitated, was incoherent, then boom, they admitted to something that they were supposed not to. They said Facebook knew about misuse of data months prior to doing anything to correct them. Not a mistake that was pure negligence. They knew it and chose not to act. The government was quick to react. Officials were furious, and the public much more so. It called for tighter regulation, for fines, for responsibility. People wanted to know, why hadn't Facebook acted sooner? Why did they let people be exposed? This was the turning point. Facebook wasn't just mishandling data, they were actively putting people at risk. Questions continued coming. Executives were questioned directly regarding user consent, data breaches, and how deep into collection their company had gotten. The more questions asked, the clearer it became that Facebook hadn't only failed to protect its users, but had in fact knowingly exposed them to risk. Then, of course, there was the data misuse that Facebook confessed to in a carefully worded blog post. They tried to make it sound like they were being transparent and coming clean, but between the lines you knew that was only what they had to admit to. They recognized that third-party apps had access to too much information, but only after the media broke the story. The public reaction was somewhat mixed. While some took comfort in the acknowledgement that something needed to be said, most people were angry again. It seemed almost too little, too late. Why wait until a group is caught to respond? Why not take precautionary measures to protect them from being exploited? More and more trust had now been broken. And yes, again, Facebook in damage control mode attempted to placate everyone at their miserable best. Not just users, but privacy advocates and tech experts, including even some former Facebook employees, sounded off to criticize how Facebook handled the situation. There was an accusation of being reactive and only speaking to problems when forced to by public scandals rather than working to solve problems ahead of time. It became pretty clear that Facebook didn't care about user safety. What it cared about was staying out of bad publicity. There were revelations from the whistleblowers lastly. Perhaps the most incriminating of all was from an internal whistleblower and insider who witnessed it all firsthand. He would come forward with documents to hand out, interview statements, and reveal just how wide-ranging these practices extended. He said Facebook pursued profit over people's safety. They did not take some warnings and deliberately did nothing to address problems that may have prevented harm. The revelations were shocking. Here was someone who had been on the inside, confirming all of our worst fears. The documents they released showed that Facebook knew exactly what they were doing, they knew the risks, and they chose to keep going anyway. The reaction was explosive. Governments around the world started talking about regulation, people began deleting their accounts, and Facebook's reputation took yet another massive hit. This was no ordinary employee whistleblower, but someone who actually attended the meetings and directly knew what was going through the process of decision-making. Their testimony spoke for a company more concerned about user engagement than user safety. It was all about getting people to scroll, click, and share, and to hell with the costs. Files had it that Facebook knew, but never acted, because on every occasion, profit outweighed change. It was a wake-up call for most, a realization that the interests of Facebook were fundamentally misaligned with that of the users. Each of those sparked public outcry and official inquiry. Officials demanded explanations, customers felt betrayed, and Facebook's competitors had little problem using the damage as grounds to attack the site. Posts filled social media sites with anger, shock, and people vowing to leave the network. Quotations from officials appeared again in the headlines, this time referring to Facebook's actions as deeply irresponsible and a threat to privacy. The pressure was mounting. Fines, new regulations, and the constant threat of more whistleblowers coming forward were all hitting Facebook hard. Their attempts to control the narrative were failing because people had seen too much and were no longer willing to look the other way. Governments around the world started writing new regulations to check the powers of the tech giants. Europe was tightening its rules over data protection, and in the United States, politicians first began to speak about breaking up big tech companies and preventing such abuse. Facebook was no longer a social media company, it had come to represent everything that could go wrong as corporations were allowed free rein. The public demanded change, governments began to act. We are not here to sensationalize or exaggerate, the truth is bad enough on its own. Facebook, time and time again, has proven that they will make profit over people, the truth over their backs to hide until they get busted. This video is meant to give you the complete picture, no gimmick, no fluff, reality of what happens when we trust tech giants without being held accountable. So what do? We know what to do. Stay informed, stay critical, and demand better. All of Facebook's many breaches of trust require of us all a collective wake-up call. Enough of giving up our personal data for them to store. Enough of allowing such intermediary platforms between ourselves and other humans to be unanswerable. If this video was helpful, if it made you think, then share it. Let's raise awareness, let's get talking, and let companies like Facebook know we are paying attention. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any more deep dives into the issues that matter. Together we can demand better from the companies that shape our lives. Thanks for watching.